He walked onto the biggest stage in America with no shoes on his feet and no parents in the audience. No manager. No backup plan. Just a thin Filipino boy holding a microphone, about to sing one of the most dangerous songs in music history. When the first note of Hotel California left his mouth, the room froze. Judges stopped breathing. The audience forgot how to clap. And Simon Cowell leaned forward, realizing this audition would never be forgotten. If you love real talent, real struggle, and real miracles, subscribe now and stay with us, because this story will change the way you hear music forever. The boy stood quietly backstage, barefoot on the cold concrete floor, listening to the muffled roar of the America's Got Talent audience on the other side of the curtain. Each cheer echoed like a wave crashing against his chest, threatening to knock the breath out of him. He was used to noise, but not this kind. Not the polished excitement of television lights and famous judges. His world was usually filled with street vendors shouting prices, jeepneys honking endlessly, and the distant sound of radios playing old songs in narrow alleyways back home in the Philippines. His name was Miguel Santos, and at 13 years old, he had already lived a life that most people in the room could not imagine. Miguel had no shoes because he had lost them weeks earlier while traveling. He had no parents sitting in the audience because they had been gone for years. And yet, he was here, standing on an American stage, about to sing Hotel California, a song even seasoned professionals were afraid to touch. When a production assistant gently asked him if he was ready, Miguel nodded, though his hands trembled slightly. He had practiced calming himself the same way he always did, by remembering the sound of his mother's voice before everything fell apart. Miguel grew up in a small coastal town in the Philippines, where the houses leaned against each other like tired old friends and the ocean smelled both comforting and cruel. His father had been a fisherman, strong and quiet, leaving before sunrise and returning after sunset. His mother sang while doing laundry, while cooking rice, while brushing Miguel's hair before school. Music was never a dream in their house. It was simply part of surviving. Then the storms came. One typhoon changed everything. The sea that once fed them turned violent. Boats were destroyed. Homes were swallowed. Miguel's father never returned from one storm, and his mother never recovered from the grief. Illness followed poverty, and poverty followed silence. By the time Miguel was 10, he was alone, moving between relatives who could barely feed their own children. Music became his refuge. He learned songs not from lessons but from listening. Old cassette tapes, crackling radios, tourists passing through with guitars slung over their backs. Hotel California was one of those songs that felt like a story Miguel already understood. A beautiful place that traps you. A dream that costs more than it promises. Miguel sang wherever people would stop and listen. Outside markets, near bus terminals, at night, when the heat finally softened and the stars came out. Sometimes people gave him coins. Sometimes they gave him food. Sometimes they simply stared, confused by the power coming from such a small, fragile frame. One evening, a foreign traveler recorded Miguel singing and uploaded it online. The video was grainy, the sound imperfect, but the voice was undeniable. Within weeks, the clip traveled farther than Miguel ever had. It crossed oceans. It reached people who made decisions. That was how America happened. The AGT invitation felt unreal. Miguel didn't even understand the full meaning of the opportunity. He only knew it was a chance to sing where people truly listened. The journey itself nearly broke him. Airports, interviews, paperwork, a language he spoke but not fluently. And through it all, he clung to his one constant, the song. Backstage, someone asked why he chose Hotel California. Miguel smiled shyly and said it felt like a place he had already lived in. When his name was called, he stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding. The audience applause rolled over him like thunder. Simon Cowell watched closely, arms crossed, already skeptical. He had heard thousands of singers. He had seen dreams crumble in seconds. Miguel stood still. No guitar. No backing track at first. Just silence. Then he sang. The opening line came out soft, controlled, haunting. His accent added something raw, something real. The song didn't sound like a cover. It sounded like a confession. As he moved through the verses, the audience leaned forward. Whispers stopped. Phones lowered. Simon's expression changed slowly. Not surprise. Recognition. When Miguel reached the chorus, his voice expanded, filling the theater with a depth that didn't match his age or size. There was pain in it. Experience. A weariness that couldn't be taught. Halfway through the song, the band joined in, but Miguel never lost control. He rode the music like someone who had been drowning and finally learned how to float. Then came the twist no one expected. During the guitar solo, Miguel closed his eyes, and for a brief moment, his voice cracked. Not from weakness, but from emotion. He almost stopped. Almost. The room held its breath. And then he continued, stronger than before, finishing the song with a note so clean and powerful that silence followed instead of applause. That silence lasted only a second. The theater exploded. People stood up. Judges looked at each other in disbelief. Simon Cowell didn't clap immediately. He stared at Miguel as if trying to understand how someone so young could carry so much truth. When Simon finally spoke, he didn't criticize. He didn't joke. He simply said that this was why the show existed. But Miguel's story was far from over. Because behind the scenes, doubts crept in. Questions about his background, his guardianship, his future. Fame is never free, and the industry doesn't wait for anyone to heal. Miguel would soon learn that surviving success could be harder than surviving poverty. And the song that lifted him up would also test him in ways he never imagined. The applause finally faded, but the weight of what had just happened stayed hanging in the air. Miguel stood frozen for a moment, unsure whether to bow, smile, or cry. He had sung that song hundreds of times on broken sidewalks and crowded streets, but never like this. Never where the silence before the applause felt heavier than the noise itself. Simon Cowell leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. He didn't look impressed in the usual way. He looked disturbed, as if something personal had been stirred inside him. He asked Miguel where his parents were. The question landed softly but cut deep. Miguel swallowed and answered honestly. He said they were gone. Not in America. Not watching from home. Just gone. He didn't explain further, and he didn't need to. The audience understood. You could hear people crying openly now. One of the judges asked him why he wasn't wearing shoes. Miguel glanced down, embarrassed, and said he lost them during the trip and didn't want to ask for new ones. He said singing mattered more than how he looked. That sentence alone changed how millions would see him later. Backstage, producers rushed around, whispering urgently. Some were thrilled. Others were nervous. Miguel wasn't a polished act. He wasn't trained. He was raw, emotional, unpredictable. That scared people who liked control. Questions began to surface about responsibility, guardianship, and pressure. Fame had a cost, and Miguel was still a child. That night, clips of his audition flooded the internet. Millions watched. Millions argued. Some called him a once-in-a-generation voice. Others questioned whether a boy with so much trauma should be on such a massive stage. The song Hotel California began trending again, tied forever now to a barefoot Filipino child. Miguel stayed in a small hotel room, staring at the ceiling, replaying the performance in his head. He didn't feel like a star. He felt afraid. Afraid of losing the one thing that had always belonged only to him, his voice. Days later, Simon asked to meet him privately. There were no cameras. No audience. Just two chairs in a quiet room. Simon told Miguel that talent like his didn't come often, but talent alone wasn't enough. He said the industry could build you up fast and destroy you even faster. Then Simon did something no one expected. He asked Miguel what he wanted, not what he dreamed of, but what he truly wanted. Miguel answered without hesitation. He said he wanted to sing without losing himself. He wanted to help kids back home who slept hungry like he once did. He wanted his voice to mean something. That answer changed everything. When Miguel returned to the stage for the next round, the pressure was unbearable. Expectations were sky high. Critics waited for him to fail. And this time, he almost did. His voice wavered during rehearsal. Doubt crept in. The song that once felt like home now felt heavy. Then, minutes before going live, Miguel made a decision. He would sing Hotel California again, not because it was safe, but because it was honest. He would own it completely, scars and all. The performance that followed wasn't perfect. It was better than perfect. It was human. He sang with restraint, with pain, with maturity far beyond his years. When he finished, Simon stood up immediately. No hesitation. No calculation. The golden buzzer was pressed. Gold rained down. Miguel collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed. For the first time since losing his parents, he felt seen. Not pitied. Seen. That moment didn't just change his life. It changed the song itself. From that night on, when people heard Hotel California, they didn't just hear a rock classic. They heard a barefoot boy who crossed oceans with nothing but a voice and courage. Miguel didn't win the competition in the traditional sense. But he won something bigger. He became proof that music doesn't belong to the rich, the trained, or the privileged. It belongs to those brave enough to tell the truth. Today, Miguel still sings. Still barefoot sometimes. Still humble. And every time he opens his mouth, the world listens.